All right. We have Zach Mobius with us, and here's an intro written from the perspective of Chris Hemsworth playing Thor. Ladies and gentlemen, gather round like you're waiting a feast at the Grand Hall of Asgard, for we present to you none other than the mystical conjurer, Zach Mobius. But hold on a moment. Don't be deceived by the simplicity of his name, for when I say AI, I'm not talking about asparagus innovation. Oh no, my friends, we're diving deep into the cosmic pool of artificial intelligence, and Zach is here as the cosmic server writing its digital waves. Ever wondered what happens when you mix data with a dash of wizardry? Now, Zach might not whip up pumpkin carriages, but he's a virtuoso at turning mundane data into gems that could make even a dwarven smiths envious. With a history steeped in decoding data mysteries, engineering marvels, and even taking a spin in the ex Uber chariot, he's reshaped more numbers than I've swung Majnor around. But here's the twist. Zach is not just a master of ones and zeros. He's a SaaS warrior on a quest to arm entrepreneurs with tools so powerful they'd make all Father Odin himself proud. He's not your average CEO. He's a chief enchantment officer. Whether it's health hacks that rival the potions of the healers, summoning leads quicker than a lightning bolt, or expanding revenue like the cosmic sprawl of the nine realms, his toolkit is more diverse than the contents of Yggdrasil's roots. Now, you might be wondering, how fast can I absorb this cosmic wisdom? Fear not, dear mortals. Zach's insights hit you faster than Hemdall's gaze, enlightening your AI journey from mere earthling to digital deity in the blink of an eye. So gather your mead and get ready for a voyage through the dimensions of AI and the entrepreneurial wizardry, guided by a scholar who's like a blend of cosmic sage and technological trickster. Brace yourselves as Zach Mobius unveils the secrets of making AI dance to your command, smoother than Thor's moves on the dance floor of Valhalla.
That was awesome. I'm officially hiring Max to just feed him ridiculous prompts and intro me before I do anything now. So free up your calendar, bud. We have a lot of meetings that I need you to roll in before me and say exactly that. It was awesome.
Perfect.
Cool. So we'll fire up the slides. I think before I kind of hop, so today is going to be a lot around program design for coaching. Brief intro on me. For this, worked at Uber doing strategy work, so how to grow and scale large businesses, and then took that and building a software company for coaches called Dexata, really built around how do you deliver high quality service in a more efficient way. AI is playing a bigger part of that, which I'll show you a sneak peek of what we're doing with that. But kind of the general frame of today is, how do you use pretty basic AI to get ahead on the program design front? And what are some other stuff you can do with that? Because I know that like when you look from a coaching standpoint, most coaches really enjoy the coaching aspect of it, where you're getting clients results, you're working with them, you're solving problems. The program design thing can feel like a bit of a chore. Have totally been there before when you're spending most of Sunday trying to handcraft, I don't know, 10 to 20 programs. And you're just like, this is kind of a burn of a day. And you've got to do that once per week. So I want to give you some tools around one, how to do it, but more like how I think about it. Because I think that's the more powerful thing, is if you can start to think, okay, like how do I customize this to the way that I want to program, the way I want to run the business? There's a lot you can do with this. So first half of this is going to be me kind of going over the frame of it. And then I'd like to make it pretty interactive. So we can kind of feed in like how you guys do things. We can work through problems on the fly. It's either going to be really great or gently embarrassing when you're like, this guy doesn't know anything. But I think either way, it's probably going to be the more fun way to do this. So before we hop, where's everyone at in their kind of coaching journey, from like just started my coaching business and have like less than 5 clients to seasoned pro? If you just want to like throw it out, unmute or drop in the chat, kind of where's everyone at? And I think that'll help me tailor this.
I've pretty much just started coaching people in productivity, so relatively new.
Cool.
Yeah, same for me. Probably only about a month into coaching on video editing, social media strategy.
Sweet. What else we got? Just starting, new to as well. It's great. All right, anyone else want to drop in, and then we'll go from there.
Oh, I've been doing it for about a year now.
Cool. Steven, the legacy person here, like it. Cool. So we'll go ahead and hop in. And I like that you guys are not just training coaches, because you'll get a lot out of, I think, more of the thought process behind it. So let me go ahead and share out. Good to go. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Good. Awesome. Cool. So that's the old presentation. Cool. So we're going to hop in. Kind of went over this in the pre-intro, but today's really about AI program design. So was geared more towards athletic coaches. I think given the audience, we can walk through how you would use it with clients and start to mess around with that on the prompting side. So I already went through my background. You guys know who I am. We'll kind of build next out into this. So the big goal for today is how do you provide a way to improve efficiency of your online coaching and program design, but more the how to think about using AI. Because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. It becomes reasoning by analogy, where you're just like, I saw this person run this really cool prompt, but I don't know how the underlying stuff works. So I'm kind of like at the mercy of either repeating the prompt or trying to edit a little bit of stuff. It kind of reminds me when I was at Uber learning SQL, which is just a really basic database kind of command structure to pull data. And I didn't understand how to use the general code under it. So I could only use code that other people had written. And it makes you really ineffective at what you're doing because you can't really play outside of that. So I think today, mostly through discussion, really want to deep dive into how to think about this so you can use it in your business, whether you're a productivity coach or whether you're a fitness coach. But we'll use fitness as the example. So I've got the world's most touchy mouse. Okay, we'll back out of this. We'll go slide by slide. So outline for today is going to be prompting, program design, some other use cases in Q&A. We'll probably spend more time in the Q&A, but we'll kind of kick it off. So I'll go over a brief prompt template. I know everyone has their kind of ways of doing things, but this is a way that's really helped me. And whenever I sit down to write a prompt, how am I thinking about it? And then the first thing is going to be context. So you want to feed the model context of what you're doing. I think the best analogy I've heard is like you have the smartest friend in the world, but he will literally do exactly what you say, no more, no less. And I think where a lot of people get tripped up is they're unable to communicate exactly what they want. And they get frustrated that like, oh, like the prompt is not giving me what I want. Like it just must not be there yet. Like there's some really cool stuff you can do with this, but like you have to be very good from a communication standpoint on getting the model to do what it's supposed to do. Because at the end of the day, like all it's doing is taking the context that you're giving it and trying to predict the output that you want based on that. Like garbage in, garbage out. So like if you have garbage inputs, it's going to give you garbage outputs. And the more clear you can be with the inputs, and this even goes down to like how you use certain words, the better the outputs are going to be. So when you look at a prompt, and we'll go through these step by step, I always try to think through, okay, like what is the context? For this, we'll kind of go through from a programming standpoint, but like the context is kind of the background you want to give it. So for coaches, it's like, I'm an expert strength coach and like, here's what we're doing. For a startup that I'm building with my wife around how to better educate doctors, the context could be, I'm a gynecologic oncologist with 10 years of experience and I'm trying to improve my learning. Just by giving those two like avenues, you give someone the setup of, okay, like here's what realm we're playing in, here's where we're not. Because if you spin it back to like how this stuff works, it's chunking down data and searching for it basically as fast as it can. So like, I don't exactly know how ChatGPT is built, but I think it uses a lot of the same embedding stuff where it takes lots and lots of data and chunks it down into smaller pieces that can be searched on what's called a vector database, which is like a multi-dimensional plane that shows the relationship of everything. So if you have like the relationship of everything, giving it that context allows you to say, okay, like within that multi-dimensional plane, where's a good place to start? Like program design, being an oncologist, or like not super similar. So by giving the model that, we're giving it a place to start or a jumping off point. The second thing is going to be a specific goal. So like now that we have our context, what do we want the model to do for us? For program design, we're going to walk through, okay, like how do you build a program for a client and the inputs for that? Back to the other example, this like learning platform I'm building. It could be like, I want you to quiz me on certain things. So like you have the context, and then you have the goal of that. And those two are probably going to be the most important. And it's kind of like when you write a headline for copywriting, I would spend a lot of time figuring out, okay, like what is the context for this? And then what is the specific goal? Because everything under that's going to be framing how you do this or giving the model context and structure to do it. Third is going to be specific format. This is going to be how you want the data output. This is like, I consider this like an 80-20 or 90-10 solution. I think where a lot of people go wrong, especially with the GPT models, is they're expecting a perfect output, and they spend a lot of time editing the prompt, trying to get the output to be perfect, when in reality, if you get an 80 or 90% solution that you can clean up after the fact, you'll save yourself a lot of time. And then maybe you go back after and try to clean up the format a little bit so it's better. Number 4 is going to be break down bigger tasks into smaller tasks. It's really enticing to try to get this done in one prompt. But the outputs from that can be a little varied at times. Sometimes it's really good if you're very clear. So like if you have a step-by-step instruction that is like crystal clear, then you'll probably get the output. If not, I err on the side of trying to break these things up and then condense them, because then you can figure out like where you've gone wrong. If I've got this like tome of a thing where I wrote 500 words on a prompt and the output is wrong, it's kind of like when you're coding actual software. If you don't do it iteratively, you're like, okay, where is this going wrong and how do I fix it? And then the 5th is going to be providing examples. So this is going to be, I think, probably back to the specific format piece. If you can give it examples to go off of, it's going to be more effective, because then you say like, I want it in this format, and here's what this format looks like. And I'll show you this in terms of programming for coaching, but we can backtrack it into, okay, how you would apply this to other businesses as well. So before I jump off, this is a really important part of the presentation. Does everyone kind of understand that, or is there any questions around this?
So just to clarify,
Mhm.
like a clarification question, before you start like doing what you want to do, you need to make sure that the AI has the understanding of like the context. So like from a D&D perspective, it's like AI is super high intelligence, but 0 wisdom. So you have to train it up to get some wisdom.
That's a good way of looking at it. And we'll go over the do you understand, actually, because like in most of the prompts that I write, and you'll see it here, I will have the model clarify, do you understand exactly what I'm asking? And I think the intelligence wisdom piece is great. Other analogy I really like, it's like the world's smartest toddler, which fits exactly that. Like it can do exactly what you want, but it's like, if it doesn't know the direction it's supposed to go in, it'll just babble on for days. And the shitty thing about it is because the output is so large for a lot of people, people are like, oh, like the app, like the model is really smart, but like the size of the output does not necessarily equate to breadth, depth, or quality. Does that make sense? Cool. Any other questions
Yes, for
here?
sure.
We'll be going over these. Awesome, Garrett. And we'll go being over these with examples. So cool. So for context, this would be an example for programming. So I want you to act as an expert strength coach who assists clients in building the perfect exercise program to achieve their goals. A little bit of context, a little bit of specific goal, but we'll go over the difference there. I want to call it a few things. One is even adding the adjective expert versus non-expert is going to give you a different output. So if you say expert with 10 years of experience, I've found that to give a different output than just the qualifier you're looking for. It's really weird, but unless you asked it to like kind of play the persona of what you're asking, it doesn't necessarily default to the level of quality that you want. Number 2 in this is going to be who assists clients in building the perfect exercise program. Again, this is just another caveat or qualifier, because like strength coaches can have a ton of different jobs, but like this is the one we want to do around program design. And then to achieve their goals, you just kind of finish off the sentence of like, this is kind of giving context of like what we're doing. We want to help fitness clients achieve their goals. If you were doing this for something else, so like what would be another example of like so Max and Andre, like your productivity, I guess, like how would you guys think about approaching this? We can kind of like talk through it.
Andres, you want to go?
So just how I would kind of reward this specifically towards what I coach, you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk through it. We can play with it at the end with the model.
Let's say provide coaches with a 3-step model on getting started with social media to generate leads.
Cool. So I'm gonna pick on you since you went first, but I think the feedback will be good. So what you did was crammed everything into one of those. If the goal is to try to get leads, it would make more sense to position the model in saying that like you were an expert copywriter, you were an expert marketer, you were like an expert in getting leads, and then use the rest for that. And then I would go into the goals like, okay, like what is a 3-step process that like Gary Halbert would use in copywriting to generate leads?
Okay.
Cool. And that's just another thing, like, don't be afraid to use multiple prompts for multiple things. I've yet to find like one super prompt, and I find just tweaking that is more helpful. But does that make sense on like why you would do that?
Yeah. So you want to just take it step by step rather than trying, just cramming in general doesn't sound like a good idea with AI.
It's just tough right now because like the outputs are so varied, and then like you spend a lot of time being like, huh. What about you, Max?
As a productivity consultant, I would like to help people gain clarity on what they truly want to do and what they shouldn't be doing anymore. And then from there, how to utilize productivity tools to basically produce faster results with less stress.
Cool. So same thing there. I think like if you really wanted to be pedantic about it, you could break it down even further. Because like when you look at what a productivity consultant does, like one, like I want to help people like gain clarity and set the vision for their life, you could probably position it as something like slightly different, same output. And then if you say like I want to help someone become more efficient so they can do the same stuff in less time, that's going to give you slightly like that different context is going to say, okay, like we're trying to help with like big picture strategic vision, or we're trying to help with like more dirt of like how do we eliminate stuff, because like the elimination is going to be like, okay, we need to eliminate, automate, delegate, here's different stuff we can do. If you're saying like I want to put together a vision for my life, you're going to want a slightly different frame to do that because they're not the same thing.
Yeah, cool. That makes sense.
Cool. Anyone else want to get picked on for context for their business? And then we'll go to the next one. All right, rock and roll. Next is going to be specific goal. So with goal, you can state the goal explicitly, or I'll show you what I do that's a bit different, that's more parameter based. Because I found just saying that like I want this is not always as clear as saying that like I want you to do this, this, and this. And with coaching, like I want to feed in like these parameters on what the client's going through. So like the client has this training age, the client has this injury history, like this is the client's goal. They want to work at X amount per week. It's a way for you to give context around the goal. And this one I kind of achieved because like my goal was wrapped up a bit in the first one, but you'll see with the specific goal params that the goal for the client is in there. So like this is an example of like, I want to feed it like how I'm thinking about this, and then I'll feed it the inputs to use for that. So it's a little bit clearer on what to do. And I'll send out this presentation afterwards. Don't have to worry about that. So take notes on ideas, but like no point in taking pictures of it. Unless you want to post them.
Yeah, I'm putting it up on the story.
Yeah, always down for PR. So for this, I think it may help to like, I'll show you the params, and you guys can like give context around that. And then this is specific goal. So did these, I may have done these twice. Yep, I did context twice. That's specific goal. And then format. So with exercise formatting, this is like how I want the output to be. So I would say like I want the order of the exercise, I want the exercise name, I want the number of sets, I want the number of reps, recommended tempo, and rest period. If you were doing this for your other stuff, you could put it in that way, but this is kind of like, this is what I want my output to look like. But I also kind of want to phrase it in a sense that like it understands what this is. And I also give an example of that as well. So for specific format, we kind of gave the context, the goal. How would you think about formatting, or like give an example of like what you want to do, and how would the output be for that?
So in the case of video editing, would this output almost be like number of videos put out per period of time? Is that kind of what you're saying?
It could be. So what is walk me through the goal. So like for the video editing one, what is the output you want?
So the output from the student's perspective, like of what I want to teach them to do, is to consistently put out specifically short form videos, so Instagram Reels, and then have those Reels be tailored to provide value for their ideal client, and then bring in actual clients from providing that value.
Gotcha. If you were going to chunk that down to a few different deliverables, what would those be?
Deliverables, just to clarify, deliverables from me to the student or the student to their social media platform?
You to the so I guess like you to the student, how would you think about using this? So like the first one is like 3-step process to get more leads. In that kind of same frame for the format, I would kind of focus on like for that 3-step process, what format do you want it in? And how do you want it kind of like broken down and customized? Is it like a step-by-step thing of like post your video here and then do this and then do that? Or are you kind of going more broad picture of like, I want a 3-step process that helps you brainstorm for Reels content, or I want a 5-step process that helps you turn an idea to a script?
Yeah, it's a mixture of them. Like the 3-step process is creating your avatar, and then creating the content database, and then executing the content. So within the avatar, it's more of a worksheet style where you're like diving deep into what you want to do and who you want to help. And then the content database is more just like pumping out ideas. And then the execution is just the filming, the editing, the scripting, all that.
Yep. I would break those out all into separate prompts. I would have one that like helps the person walk through the avatar, and you can do some cool stuff around like getting it to ask you questions and kind of like learn and ask from those. I would do another one like, how do you take those, like you now have an avatar, how do you generate ideas that avatar would resonate with? And then I would do a separate process for, you now have ideas you would resonate with, so like 3 steps to become more productive, or like 5 ways to shave 10 minutes off your day. How do I turn those into scripts? And then from there, you can give those to your students and say like, yeah, if you're ever stuck, or like if you want to figure out a really in-depth way of like how to do an avatar, like, yeah, everyone uses worksheets, but then you just sit the worksheet, you're like, oh, I don't know what to do. But like, I've got this interactive process where we can use AI to like kind of coax it out of you. And then once we have those, we can feed those into an like idea generator to figure out based on that avatar, what do they want? And then once we have those, I can take those and say like, hey, take this idea, put it into a script, and all you have to do is edit for your likeness.
Okay.
So it makes but like, that's kind of like the thought process of it, because you can think through like, how do I take what I'm already doing with people and I just make it more efficient by creating a process around AI to use it?
Yeah.
Cool. Anyone else want to go here? And then we'll go to the examples. Cool. So last thing is breaking down into smaller steps. Super simple one, more example focused. Even within program design, we'll kind of go through like how I would approach it. So from giving the program instructions to doing the intake to building a table out of that to creating the next phase. So a bit more self-explanatory. This is my provide examples. So go up here. So now I will show you guys how we do this. So for a program design prompt, this is a pretty simple one that I put together of like, this is kind of how everything comes together. So we'll take this and drop this into GPT, but this has all the components we were talking about. So like ask an expert strength coach who assists clients programming, build programs in the following structure, order, exercise name, number of sets, reps, recommend rest period. Here's an example of that. And then I'm going to give you the following param so you can build that program. And then I will call this out. I should bold it. I almost always say, do you understand? Because if not, it just jumps off into doing the thing, which doesn't allow you to feed the params that you want. And you also get that like readout of like, okay, like it knows what I want to talk about. Then we'll go to here. Cool. Start a new one. I will be using 3.5 today. You can use 3.5 or 4. Doesn't really matter. I've been using 3.5 more because that's what we use with Duxata. So I want to try to get that right. If you really want to like go for more accurate, I would just pay the $20 and we can experiment on like what these would look like 3.5 or 4. I think that'd be a fun kind of cross check. Because it's just going to give you better logic. It's not as fast, but the outputs are going to be more quality. So if you want especially more like thoughtful text-based stuff, like Andres, a lot of stuff with the lead generation, writing scripts, etc., I would do in 4 rather than 3 through 5, just because the outputs and logic is going to be better. So go here. Cool. Sometimes it'll give you a readout. Other times it'll do this. So we'll go back to our pres and I'll give an example. So this is the description I want. I'll kind of talk through this first before I go with it. So description, male rugby athlete wants to build muscle and get stronger. You kind of notice here I have the training goal and the client description. I found that separating those like actually gives like the more level of detail you can give, the better. Training edge, intermediate, injury history. I'm providing injury history right now. I have not found it to be great at how to apply it on a pretty quick basis. As I figure this out, I'll let you guys know. But it will acknowledge what it is. Training goal, days per week, training session length. Another kind of limitation of this is like, I don't think it does a great job of calculating the training session length. Some of these can get pretty long. So like you as a coach will have to figure out, okay, like, you know what, maybe 8 exercises at 4 seconds each or 4 sets each is probably not going to be done in 45 minutes. Preferred training split and program influences. I want to show these in detail because like you can feed it different stuff and get different outputs based on that. Like the database it's pulling from and its knowledge around this is actually pretty solid. So you can feed the different influences and you'll see the different outputs, which will show. So we'll go here. Cool. So what you'll see is like not a bad program. I think anyone familiar with like the kind of West Side max effort, dynamic effort approach, like this syncs pretty good with that. I like how it put in varying tempos based on the exercises, and the format is what I would want. What you may find with this is like there's times, especially if you're programming, that like you don't want things paired together for a superset. You can always change those with the output. So I'm not going to screw anything else around, but like this is like you could give this program to somebody and run it, and it's probably better than like 85% of stuff feel right. But the key there is like it has to have something to pull from. So like the upper lower split gives it context, how we were talking about these params being good. So like you need to have sets, reps, tempo, and rest. And then telling it to have a West Side influence is going to push it in the right direction. Because if you give it general stuff, what you'll get is a lot of like 3 by 10 to 12, which like looks a lot about, I mean, maybe it's just going on the fact that like muscle and fitness and T Nation have so many things on there. T Nation's pretty good actually, but like muscle and fitness has so many like 3 times 8 to 10 or 3 times 10 to 12 that it's pulling from that. So next thing from this is going to be our second prompt. So breaking it apart. We're going to convert this to a different format. So we're actually going to use 7 columns. Where says where's the tempo? Cool. So why I broke this up again is just I found that like forcing it directly into this right away can lead to some issues. So I would rather kind of break this up with that. So go with that. This is also incredibly powerful if you know how to use like the table function of this to put things in tables and like get the functions you want and start to reorganize and re-architect data. It's awesome at cleaning up data. I don't know if that's something a lot of you guys do, but like I had a ton of time with that, especially at Uber on cleaning up leads data. And this has been great for that. So with this, we'll go over outputs and limitations. Sorry, pull chat. Cool. So one good thing, it did put everything into a table like we asked. 2 is in an ideal format, you would just have the day all the way down. But if you want to output this into Excel, all you have to do is copy paste. And like now you have a program, you can dump it in Google Sheets and give someone. So last thing we'll do with this would be cool. So the client did that. What do they do next? And if you have actual client data, you can feed into this and like it becomes kind of cool. So with this, and I'll kind of go over successfully completed the recommend phase. Could you suggest the next phase would be in the same format? Two things you're going to look for. When I say same format now, it's going to give data in the output that we asked. So we don't have to two-step it anymore. We're in the same conversation. It's going to give you the same output. I want to progress by using different exercises and rep schemes, and I want you to explain why you built the program the way you did. This is so much faster than it was like 6 months ago. It's insane. We would have had to like set the clock up and just really go back and forth. But cool. So what you'll notice is it combines step 1 and step 2 into the same thing. So like once you have this prompt and like you've gone through kind of a multi-step process, you can start running it for other clients and just say like, I have a client that looks like this. Can you give me the output? Number 2 here is, again, like I think the program is pretty good. It prioritized chins on the max effort day instead of your upper body. So like back squat 8 first. You're seeing different rep schemes between weighted chins and barbell bench presses, like which is what you would actually want to see. The per arm recommendation there, push-ups with chains, very west side thing. And then close grip bench and the banded face pulls as an accessory series are something you're going to see almost exclusively there. So you can see the kind of methodology and thought process of advancing from like where we were up here to all the way down. So we went from dips and face pulls to close grip bench and face pulls, pretty similar. So that is kind of the output of this. And then the last thing you can do, it may have been the last thing actually. Nope, that was the last thing. Convert to a different format, progress the program, and explain why you did the way you did. So from there, I could just put in like a different, like completely different person and get it to do the same thing, which we can go ahead and try that. So before I do that, any questions on what I did? And any ideas on like, okay, I did this here with strength athletes, like how would you apply it to your program or your business?
Kind of a general question. I'm curious how you came up with this prompt. Was it a lot of trial and error? Was there a lot of just like deep thinking before you trialed it? And yeah.
Cool. So how I came up with this was going back to the overlay prompt. So if you start with this outline, I need context, I need a specific goal, I need a format, I need to break things down from bigger to smaller tasks and provide examples. You were able to get, I would say, like an 80% jumping off point. It's not going to be exactly perfect, and I can show you kind of like what I've tweaked along that, but this will get you most of where you want to go. What I like about this is it's super flexible. With this specific thing, I did toy around with it a bit. And the things I toyed around with were a lot more around this. So I think the 2 biggest influences you're going to see on here that actually took hold were the preferred type of training split and the program influence, which we can run like a different example and you can see it. That's going to give you a lot of context. And then I think 3rd tier of like what likely got factored in was the training age and the goal. So you kind of want to think through what factors are going to be most influential into what I'm doing and how do I want to think about that? Like if you're thinking about productivity, there's a lot of people in the productivity space. If you tend to resonate with like one person more than the other, you could say like, I want you to think about this like Tim Ferriss would versus I want you to think about this like James Clear would. They're very similar in their approaches, but there's a lot of nuance in Atomic Habits versus the 4-hour work week. And there's tons of stuff baked in there. Number 2 is when you're thinking about influences and like different factors, so like training split, et cetera, the limitation of the model is that it is sitting on data from like September 2021 and past. It could be a little more updated now, but that's how I always would have tried to benchmark off of. So I try to think of like who was big then and what are concepts that were really well understood. West Side Barbell for this one has been going on for a long time. But you could feed it a ton of other stuff, which we can show, and it'll give you a similar output. Any other questions there, or kind of like ideas around it?
Yeah. What's your experience with making programs like Westside Barbell, as you were saying, was like there's a lot of stuff on the internet from Westside.
Yeah.
But what about like, have you experimented with programs like, if you said making like ATG program or something like that? Does it come up with knowledgeable stuff, or what's the experience with that?
Let's try it. I think my sense is like it's going to be a bit tougher, but we're going to give it a spin and see what happens. So like I'll go ahead and say Ben Patrick, but for this we may have to tailor it back to Charles Poliquin, who like has a lot of stuff around this time and is kind of like where the ATG tree came from. So we can say that. We'll even switch this to intermediate lifter. Kidney pain, or I'll just go NA here. What you will see sometimes, if you take the injury history out, it will sometimes push the intensity a bit more. But I haven't like experimented enough with like, okay, we now have corrective exercises around this, of what's going on. Training session length will be the same. Cool. And I will add a caveat here. This is just an explainer for me of like, I want to know how it's thinking about how to use Ben Patrick. There we go. This can happen sometimes, so bear with me. Great time to ask another question.
Question, Zach.
Yep.
So regarding like you were telling me in the mastermind call about content production and inbound lead generation, what do you think of literally using ChatGPT to help me with my data science work and then posting that as inbound lead generation content on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool. I think for you, especially on data science, you need to play around a lot with GPT-4. I'll show you a little bit of it, and the code interpreter. Totally worth the extra $20 a month. And the code interpreter essentially turns like anyone into a high-level data scientist. So yeah, if you can start like, there's a ton of YouTube videos on that. I think demonstrating that's probably outside the context of my expertise here. But you can get it to come up with a ton of really cool stuff around that. I'll show you one way of how we're using it and how it uses Python at the end of the presentation, but that's what I would do with it. And you could just show like how you're thinking about using it and how you use it with businesses you work with.
Excellent.
Cool. So this is still going. We'll go ahead and read this. So Steven's perspective. So knee health focus. Yeah. Strengthening knees while improving athletics. Declines basketball player, supporting consider knee health mobility. However, there's no injury history. Boom. I'm curious if we put like knee pain, we can go ahead and rerun this, what it would come up with. Upper lower split, and then influence of Ben Patrick. So lower body strength or system, even for a basketball player, includes exercise that promote detail stability and strength. So we'll go ahead and give the, I guess, day 2 lower. I can't say it's exactly what Ben wrote, but I think the step ups being in there are probably one qual that you will not get with if you didn't do that. Use the RDL, glute bridges not as much, and probably a traditional split squat, which I think is down here in the other lower body day than it is in the top one. So I would give this like a C+ of putting it out. I wouldn't give it like an A- or a B.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
It just grabbed like pieces of what he's talked about and different things, and then just kind of threw them together. It seemed like step ups. He says split squats a lot, so they just threw in split squats on both days. I don't know where goblet squat came from though. Maybe VMO. That's what they're trying to hit.
Yeah, possibly there. And see, it gave a different output for this, like incorporating his stuff. So we'll see what output number 2 is. Output number 2 is actually less correct. You can see it now, other than like the chin-ups and push-up variation. But I can't tell if that is like if we ran this through GPT-4, if it would give a better output than that, or what data Ben had out circa 2021.
So
And
if you were like say you had a bunch of notes on ATG principles, Keegan,
Yep.
Poliquin, and you put that all into one document and you just said, hey, in one thread, this is what I want you to build this off of, and then you ask it that, is that something people could do?
yes. So this is being a little far right now. Yeah. So that's what you could do. You could tell it to go off of like just the data you have. I'll give you an example that is not that, but it proves the premise. And then I want to open it up a bit for questions, or I'll show you one thing, how we're using it, and we'll go questions. So, and this is using 4, but I'll walk you through the thought process and how we're using it this way. So my wife and I are putting together a model that helps, starting with oncologists, be able to study in a way that is native for them. She's required to read a ton of papers, but she spent basically, I don't know, 12 to 16 years of her life learning for multiple choice tests. And it's just nice to be able to get quizzed on the grab of the answer. So what we're doing, and like we built a bank around like 130 studies, and we were using AI to pull from those and generate a random question. To get the beta out, what we eventually like did was, the papers are super long. They're like 15 to 20 pages. And the longer that, the more you have to search through this. So like with the ATG principles thing, this is kind of how I would do it. Rather than getting the entire paper, I don't know if any of you guys have read a scientific paper anytime recently. I know I have not. There is an abstract section and a methods, and it'll go over and give you the key information that you need. And then the rest of the study will kind of tell you how it's done. So what we did as a workaround was we started getting the abstract of this to pull it out. And then based on that abstract, we were able to generate good questions with a lot of like my wife's specifics around what she wanted out of it. So the way I would apply that is like, if I had the ATG principles on hand, I would put that as a starting base, saying that like, you were an expert strength coach. Here are your principles for creating a workout. Do you understand? Okay, cool. I need a workout for this person in this format, in this context. Go ahead and do that. That makes sense?
Yeah. And I just had another curiosity. So say you every time you create a new thread, it remembers stuff about that. So if I like fed it every article that Ben Patrick has ever written, like over time, and then I start asking it questions like, how would Ben think about this issue? Is that something you can do? It's kind of like creating a chatbot of Ben Patrick.
Yeah, so I think the approach would be a little bit different there. I think right now this is just like, how do you use GPT? What you would want to do there is what we did for the initial creation of, of the oncology question bank, of like, we have 130 studies, and it's no longer pulling from the internet. I can show you. That is just pulling from the studies that we showed. So what you would do with that is like, you're replacing the underlying database that it's pulling from. So like, rather than it pulling from data 2021 and past, you can say like, I just want this, and you can run similar prompts against it. So that's how I think about it. And then before we open it up, this is how we're using it. So this is Dexata. This is the software platform that I built for coaches. So it's really how to manage your clients, how to get them good results. But the direction we're moving towards is, okay, we have nutrition, we have program design, we have all that. How do we expedite this for coaches? So we go into training and programs. You can either create a program by yourself. So here's just like, I don't know, a random program. So you can have a program built out of like everything you want going on. What we're starting to play with is, how do you use AI with the program design? So before, you could just kind of like dump it into a like cheat. If we go to generate workout, prompt, I hope this works because we just put this in and it has been a bit finicky. So if you ever built software before, you know what I'm talking about. So here's the prompt. I want this broken down into like for this type of person. I want to have, so like with this, I use format in a different sense. I use format and like, this is the format I want for a workout. Here's an example workout. So like dense, structural balance, stretch strength, etc. Let's go ahead and run the prompt and get it. So this is what we came out with. Not exactly what I wanted, pretty close. But the cool thing about this is we can now take this and hit create workout from it. And it'll give you a workout, should give you a workout, that is in the exact same format of a program builder within the platform. Cool. So if we have, see this warm up, we have dense strength, we have stretch strength and cool down. And within all of these, that med ball rotational pass is already programmed. Med ball slam for dense strength. It's in a pronated pull-up. If we want to add another exercise to that, totally could. And then within stretch strength and cool down, you can see all of the stuff within that. So this is kind of how we're thinking about, okay, how do we take this stuff and put it into where coaches can use it right off the bat without using the platform? Because if you can run this for programs, you can save 20 or 30 minutes at a click, and you always have somewhere to start. You can edit the program after the fact. So that is pretty much it for me. Oh yeah, I think I already talked about these. Two limitations I found is like, especially with programming, is like the order is not ideal sometimes. So like it doesn't give you like the A1, A2, A3 that you want. And programming injuries is a limitation. But that is program design with GPT kind of in a nutshell. First thing, was that helpful? Everyone gives me a verbal thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah, super cool.
Cool. What was the most beneficial part of that? And we'll go questions. If this has really been Patrick, we can skip day 3. Cool. So what was the most helpful part of this? Either in being able to apply to your own business or just general learnings?
For me, it was very helpful that you went through the process, not only like the actual process, but the pre-phase and the conceptual understanding, and then you showed the practical application of it with specific examples. So it was like a full overview as well as specificity so that we can like literally apply this or look back at this and apply it pretty much immediately.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
Yeah, similar for me. The problem I've always faced with ChatGPT is like I just get in this cycle of getting the wrong response, and then I try to fix it by saying like, no, like you should have done this instead. So like you kind of took the plan further ahead approach. Like you, before you just feed ChatGPT, like think deeply about how it's going to react to this, or try to think how it's going to react to it, and then go from there. Because I just always get in this cycle of like, no, that's not right, and like you should have done this and fix that, and don't put that in.
Yeah, no, that's a really big one, because I think that if you know what you want, you're really clear on that, then it's easier to find like where it's right and where it's correct. And even back to kind of what I said, like I would take a very iterative approach with a lot of this stuff. So it's very enticing to try to create the super prompt and then run it and do what you're saying of like, okay, like, well, now I need you to tweak this and tweak that. But the problem with that is like, it's not very repeatable unless you always want to do that. So if you kind of even take step by step of like, okay, I want you to create a productivity plan that's 3 steps to be able to like save 10 hours per week. I want you to do it with the influence of Tim Ferriss or like how James Clear would. Just have those 3 things, see the differences in the inputs that you created when you test it. Like what's the difference between like for this, like a West Side Barbell versus a Ben Patrick versus a Charles Poliquin, or for productivity, like what would be the difference between like Mark Manson versus Tim Ferriss versus James Clear, and how that's kind of going. Because then you can see, okay, like who do I kind of want to lean on as an influence that more aligns for me for other stuff. Cool.
Zach, how else are you using AI and or ChatGPT like in your business life?
Yeah, so a few different ways. Number one is what I showed you with Duxata. So a lot of my time is spent around here are the things that we can do for a client right now. It's like it's everything manual for coaching. So like creating nutrition plans, updating them, messaging them, etc. I'm trying to think about how we can use AI to automate a lot of that process. So it can be you as a coach can spend a lot of your time communicating with the client, getting them to change behavior, because like that's the value add. Number two is I've been doing like more consulting around this on because like when I come in, like even with Uncom of like what I do a lot around consulting is more strategy consulting. So like here's where the business is, here's where you want to go, here's what I think needs to happen to get there. So like certain people need to be hired, certain processes need to be done, certain things need to be refined, products need to be developed. What I've started to do is like the process around that is very sound from working at Uber and implementing this in multiple companies. Where can I start to use AI to do a lot of those jobs? So example, like you need to hire more people and you need to hire these people, but like an issue is like, how do you get them up to speed on your specific business? Uncom's a great example. Like the business is not super, like it's not super straightforward. And there's a lot of tribal knowledge and stuff within Uncom that like, if you're part of it, you're like 100% is how we roll. But for someone from the outside who's like, is really good at like a skill. So I was really good at marketing and I could help generate leads for like clients, but I didn't understand the story of the business. How do I create a bot or a process to ramp somebody up so that within like a week, they're like, okay, like I understand all the big picture things. I can ask it whatever I need and I can move from there. And then third part around that is just like more operational stuff. So like chat bots, sales bots, etc. Has been kind of like my thinking right now. I think where I'm starting to shift focus, because like this is an area that I've decided that like I want to go pro in this. I think if I'm to do just the next year to this, I would not regret doing that because like I've looked back at things that I didn't adopt early on, and I was like, okay, it would have been cool to like go back and do that, and you're kind of left behind. So like, I think it's a really cool blend of applying like being very technical to being creative and being able to run through this stuff. So it's really like how I can apply that. And like an area I'm leading into after this is like, there's a lot of stuff around audio and video that I haven't even touched yet that I think is going to be super impactful. So those are kind of like how I'm thinking about it. It's really just like, I guess to give you a frame there, what can be automated? And then are there things I can learn faster doing it? Or are there processes that like would be better used for a bot or a tool rather than me doing it?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Garrett, question, what's up?
Yes. Okay. I'm gonna phrase this as a prompt, not that you're an AI, but to practice my skills. So I am an entry level slash intermediate data scientist that recently took on a role as a business development rep and a data scientist in a small firm. I have a boss who typically is not on board with my ideas if they involve spending money. However, I would like to get him to invest $20 a month for what is your best or some of your best recommendations for a strategy to get him to do this?
Love that. What you could do is like one, you could do it like that and have it write you a prompt, write your output. You could probably just say that like, what is the return on investment from investing $20 in GPT-4 versus not doing that? That's what I would do. I think you're muted.
Will you please repeat one more time? I was instructing someone on how to on driving.
You're good. I think you could even crosscut that a little bit more. It's just like, how would you, like, what is the return on investment from spending $20 a month on a GPT-4 account for a small data science firm? And then it could like run the calc for you. Like it could be as simple as that. Some stuff you need context, some stuff you can be pretty straight up. If you want to give it the entire thing, it could probably give you a sales pitch, which I would find kind of funny on how you were able to execute that. But yeah, I think that's where I would start.
Perfect. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much.
Cool. No worries. Time for probably one or two more questions, and then we'll wrap up.
Ron, do you have anything for Zach? I'm sure you've got questions.
Not specifically, no. It's very interesting. What would be very interesting is to see long term what possible interfaces are there between essentially interpreting written out workouts and then formatting them, whether it's for, like, I know many of the online coaching platforms offer you to import, so they usually task you with CSVs to import exercises or programs. So this would be an interesting thing in the future if you could kind of like, if either some platforms adapt this, but this idea of like, if you export your programs in a certain way already out of your chat bot or your conversational AI, they are accessible in a certain software.
100%. So I think like I haven't seen anyone doing what we're doing. I'm biased towards that because it's me. But I think like the more you can keep it in there. So like what we did, we were able to figure out how do you take a text-based platform and move it directly in to the builder without like having to do that. Because I have seen that, like even instructions on other platforms have been like run this prompt and then copy and paste into here. But like anytime you have a software and you have someone that's like, you ask them to do anything else, the barrier of friction is incredibly high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But yeah, it's a super interesting thing. And I'm also forward to rewatching the call, take a couple notes more. I think we're like, as you're saying, like this is one of the fields where the world is changing in a certain way. And if as a coach you can use this properly, it can help you in so many ways. And then you have to find a way where the audience, or maybe that's one question, yes, because we've literally experienced this. We have like a tech startup and we just launched the app some time ago and we did some test runs, and the more we highlighted AI, the lower the conversion rate on a certain price.
Really?
As like essentially what happened is like we generate programs for people based on a super complex system. It's not even AI technically, it's just a system, but we try to advertise it with it, and they were willing to pay less. And we had two tiers. One of them is like between 50 and 150 of an AI generated program, AI generated plus feedback. And we were either saying like, you get an AI generated feedback, you can regenerate at any point in time, and you get the feedback from the person. And the other one was like we had the 24-hour wait time before the thing comes in, plus a randomized little bit change so that the program is sent in the app between like 22 and 26 hours, for example, like a person is writing it. And the conversion rate after the trial phase was much higher with the kind of like, it looks like a human is doing it.
Interesting. What was the sample size on that?
Under 100. So it's not massive.
I would run a higher sample size and kind of play with the wording.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I don't know. I've been thinking about a lot about that because I think like a model that I've even think about is like this platform is free, but like AI automation is like money after that. Because I've even found in my behavior that like there was a UI platform that was like, it's free to use. And they're like, upgrade to use the AI features. I was like, well, shit, I want to know like what's on the other side of that.
Yeah.
But that's helpful. All right, Chris, we'll close out with you and then that'll be it.
Thanks, Zach. Yeah, I think the main takeaway for me was the context. That's something I haven't done a lot of, just sort of describing your persona and kind of what you're wanting to achieve up front. So then you can, and then the other one was kind of more of the variables of what you're looking for. I guess my question was more, everybody's, when you're using ChatGPT, you're interacting with it through the interface. I haven't really delved into the API much, and I'm assuming that's how you're doing that with Duxata. You're kind of pushing questions in and pulling stuff back. How have you found the APIs to be in terms of usability and ease of kind of adopting?
It's super easy. If you want to go to, I think it's playground.openai.com or openai.com/playground. You can have the same thing. You're just running it against the non-chat GPT interface. So I found like the plugin to that, we were able to do it in less than a day. And then the vector database setup, that's taken a little bit longer. If you're trying to create like a custom knowledge base, we're personally trying to get better about that. But like candidly, we took a little bit different path. Ideally, you would have someone who has like a small bit of Python background, but like my lead backend developer knows Ruby really well. So we managed to find like the one guy on the internet who was doing this with Ruby on Rails in Russia, and got him to coach us up. So
got it. And how does the context work? Because I know if you're pushing stuff over, are you saying I'm on this thread. I want you to stay on this thread. Is there a way to kind of say, this is a new thread or this is a thread that we've already talked about, and maybe it's just a token, I guess, to say we're maintaining this thread when you're kind of pushing back and forth with the API.
Yeah, there's some certain coding you can do around like the memory caching to keep that cohesive. To be honest, I don't know exactly, like I know we do it. I don't know exactly how it happens. So I guess back to the intro around this being like kind of like magic. It is not like magic in the sense that, like, I think if you think about it in a very logical way of like how you want the output to be, then it'll give you something irrespective of that. I don't know from a data perspective exactly how it does this.
Okay. No, it's very interesting. Yeah.
Just know that
you're
we're
using
doing it.
perfect. Yep, makes
Yeah.
sense.
Cool.
Thank you.
No problem. That is all I've got. I appreciate you guys being a great audience. And then if you have any questions, just hit me up on Telegram. I think the most important thing I could give to you is like understand more how it works, so then you can think about how to using it. Don't be beholden to like somebody came up with a really cool prompt. I'm going to go ahead and use that in my business, because if you understand how like the principles of using the tool, you'll be much more powerful than somebody who can only use a prompt that somebody else created.
Awesome. Appreciate
Cool.
your time, Zach.
Excellent.
Thank you.
No problem. Have a good day, y'all.